Cool.
All right, hello everybody. This is the Kubernetes SIG architecture meeting for September 24th. Thank you all for coming. Please remember our code of conduct and treat each other with respect and kindness. And today we have just a couple things on the agenda. We'll start with a presentation from Open Cruise. And then we have a discussion of ephemeral containers and then some project readout for conformance. So the choppiness is from my end. Awesome. Well, then I won't talk much. So let's just jump right in and hear from Open Cruise. Andy, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Can I please share my screen?
Yes, 1 second. I need to make you a co-host. All right, go for it.
Okay. Right. Are you able to see this PowerPoint? Cool. Thank you. So good morning, folks. I'm Andy Schiff from Alibaba Cloud. So a couple of weeks ago, we presented this project, Open Cruise, to the CNCF TOC. Our goal was to enter as a sandbox project. And then the TOC had some concerns. They would like to know if this project fits better within the upstream or being a SIG-sponsored project, or it's better fit as a CNCF sandbox project. So for that, we are doing the due diligence. I reached out to SIG apps and the steering committee, and the steering committee said that I should come here to the SIG architecture first. And I hope that after this meeting, hopefully we don't have to go to a steering committee again, and we can just reach to the agreement on where this project should sit. On Monday, the past Monday, I had a meeting with SIG apps already, and we've had the agreement on where it should be in their opinion. So now this time I'm here to gather your professional opinion as to where this project should sit. So a little background about Open Cruise. So we, Alibaba Cloud, we have Kubernetes offerings both for the external customers and for internal customers, meaning that our large e-commerce website actually is running on top of our Kubernetes cluster. So during that process, we've got a lot of complaints about the limitations of the upstream workload management, especially when people are trying to do updates, rolling updates. And so what they wanted were two things, right? One is more combinations on the update strategies, and B is efficiency in terms of the updating processes. So we had something working already in production, and we are updating, we are open sourcing these technologies into a project called Open Cruise. So Open Cruise, currently we have only the workload management controllers, and we plan to have an operator framework wrap around these controllers, and they should be released later. Right now we are still planning and developing these features, but both of them are open source components of the open source Open Cruise project. And this is the whole project we try to donate to CNCF. So in terms of the Cruise workload management controllers, there are currently 5 of them. And we plan to add a new one, but we'll see. So the beginning of all these came from people are complaining about stateful set when they're doing update, it takes very long time because it's doing this one by one, and they wanted to have in-place update, meaning that they want to bypass the API servers. And we implemented that, and then they're saying, okay, now we want that to be the same user experience to apply to stateless containers as well. So now we have clone set. So first we had advanced stateful set, now we have clone set. And then while doing clone set, there are more requirements coming saying, okay, we want this and that updating strategy, and we want to have the capability of basically mixing and match and playing with them in combinations, different combinations. And that's what the concept is about. Currently, it's still under active development. And there's another controller called sidecar set. Basically, it's used to manage sidecars, like you have monitoring, logging sidecars, and it's a centralized place to manage those sidecars, and it's going to inject the sidecars, and it's going to update the sidecars using the in-place update, meaning that you don't have to restart the rollout of your workloads once you have a new version of the sidecar. And we have united deployment. This is a use case when you have your cluster is crossing different data centers, and you want to make them into different zones. Like in AWS, they have a name availability zone. We call them subsets. But this is like segregating your whole deployment or your cluster into different zones and manage pods in different subsets. And lastly, we have a thing called broadcast job, which is a specific type of job that you can select the nodes that this job will run on. So instead of having it all or having one, you have more granularity in control in picking which nodes you want to run them on. So that's basically the current status or the design of what we have. So a couple of things I think stood out in the CNCF presentation, why they were, because it's a closed door discussion, so I didn't know why, but I was wondering why they are having these questions. And one of them, I think, is that the names, right? You have advanced stateful set, and there was unified deployment. They think it's probably a fork of the upstream code. So we don't fork upstream code because we basically design all those features from scratch. So we're not adding a wrapper on top of like deployment or replica set. We just, so we use the atomic pod, right? And we are not forking the logic. And also, in terms of use cases, we are complementing, like these features are more useful for large-scale production uses. Like if you have 10 or 20 pods, probably you wouldn't see any differences. But if you have like a couple hundred pod running like for e-commerce websites, and you need to update them, yes, you will see the differences, and both for the responding time of your pods and also the load onto your API server, because so many requests definitely would be a drag on your performance of the API server. So these features are mainly designed for large-scale production users. But that being said, even though it is being used, I think we are still under active development, especially CloneSet and other new controllers that's being discussed right now, and also the operator part of it. So here is a more detailed example on a CloneSet. Like it has different types of update strategies available, and things like max unavailable, max search, and stuff. I think some of the them came from other workloads in Kubernetes, but also we have our own invention as well. We have the priority, we have the scatter, and of course, in place is a big feature, that's being requested by the community, by our users. So here is a simple comparison of what we have in terms of updating strategies of clone set versus the existing upstream workloads. And again, these features can be combined, and they can be mixed and matched. So you have way more choices in your updating, in controlling your updating strategies. So clone set really is one of the most advanced or most feature-rich controllers in all of them. All the others probably don't have that many features because they were not actively developed. Like advanced stateful set, I think we are fixing bugs, but we are not adding new features to it. But the clone set, we are still adding new features. Another example would be sidecar set. Sidecar set is centralized place to manage all the sidecars in your deployment. So it uses admission control. It decouples your workload from the sidecars, so you don't have to worry about them. And also, even though in this diagram we say clone set, it also works on deployment or other standard Kubernetes upstream workload. So basically, these things can be used with each other, or they can be used with Kubernetes upstream workload management as well. Like they are not conflicting each other. That's for sure. Like you install these controllers, you can still use deployments and stateful sets. That's not a problem. So it's not an either-or situation as well. So like I said, it's complementing the features. And I think that's pretty much the typical things that I would like to introduce. The other three controllers are pretty straightforward. Like they serve single purposes, and they are mostly already done in terms of development and feature requests. So that's not much to talk about, but they are useful to certain use cases. So we hope to include them all into this open source project, OpenCruise. So that's my presentation. Hopefully it answers some of the questions. And I think that's the screen sharing from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. So we have a lot of people on the call, so I would ask that if people have questions or comments, they use they put a chat in to raise their hand, just a hand, unless there aren't that many. But let's see how that goes. So from my opinion, and I hope you can hear me, it was a little choppy, but certainly from a sort of architecture standpoint, different workload controllers are within scope of the Kubernetes project. They don't need to be in the Kubernetes project. You could certainly create your own set of workload controllers that do whatever you want and have your own projects and have it do whatever it is. But if you're interested in that, then yes, talking to SIG apps, just sounds like you did, would be where they would live within this project. Not talking specifically about technical merits or lack thereof, I don't know enough about it to say at this point, but certainly from a scope perspective, which is kind of what I would think this group would be interested in, it's an appropriate set of projects, a set of controllers, if SIG apps has the capacity and the sort of will to take them on. That's my opinion. I don't know if Tim maybe would be people with additional opinions there. Nobody else seems to be saying anything. Andy, how did the conversation with SIGAPs go? What was their take on it?
Sorry, really cannot hear you clearly. This this audio is just horrible.
So can I ask one question? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, there you go.
So it's interesting to look at how people in the real world are slicing and dicing their workloads. I think there's actually a couple of concerns in what you were showing, like the idea of sidecar as a resource is interesting, independent from the workloads concepts. There's some things that seem like they would be generally useful features, and like why doesn't deployment have them? I don't know. What I really want to avoid is a situation where users have to sort of go shopping for which workload controller is right for them. Like, let me make an analogy. You ever go to the grocery store and you buy toothpaste and you have to choose between tartar control and whitening? Why can't I have both?
Mm-hmm. Right. Oops.
So I guess I'm just saying I would encourage us to think hard about if the differences between these workload abstractions are really fundamental differences, or whether they should actually be controls offered on the existing workload controllers.
Yes, I agree. So there are a couple of things. One, like I said, there are like certain things that's for large production use cases, especially talking about things like in-place update, where you kind of like you bypass the API server, right? So what happens is it's not a generic use case. It's really in a it's meant for a controlled environment where you know what you're doing, because you're not getting a new node, you're not getting allocated new resources, right? The purpose of going through the API server is that the scheduler would assign you, basically destroy and create a new pod for you. And for example, you have totally different CPU or memory usage in different versions, and you should avoid using in-place update. But in production environment, in a controlled environment, I know what I'm doing. I know the differences in these images, and I can make a nice judgment call, basically saying, okay, I would like to take the risk because I know it's not going to take that much more resources. That being said, so it's really like I would say a practical use cases than a generic one. And the second part is, since these things are still in I wouldn't say experiment because they're already in use, but they are still undergoing active development. The release cycles are way faster than more frequent than the upstream release cycles in terms of features. I would feel more comfortable of merging them, like merging the majority of them after it's more mature. Like right now, I see a couple features that can be donated to upstream, like the ones we already have frozen development on, and they have been tested for a while. Those things can be upstreamed because there wouldn't be much changes. The others probably they have they need more time to mature, I would say.
Make sure everybody draws their attention to the conversation happening in the chat. if we want to bring that forward.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry. For me, the audio is really bad on the receiving end too. So, Andy, I heard what you're saying, and I didn't mean to start a side conversation. Maybe at this point we should take it back to mailing list and discuss the path forward. Like, what do we ultimately want, and what's preventing us from getting there?
mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. And also, yeah, so also I would like to confirm that I think this will be the last SIG that I need to go to before going back to CNCF and hand over our verdict, because I think steering committee would have only like meeting once a month. So I'm not sure that's a proper forum for such discussions, and also they wouldn't sponsor projects. So I would assume that the SIGs will be the right place to discuss these detailed projects or technical details. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me, can people understand me?
Yeah, kind of.
Mostly, speak slowly.
So from a scope of Kubernetes perspective, this fits with SIG apps. Whether you know, and it would be up to them to sort of decide to take features of this or not. As far as your donation to CNCF versus Kubernetes, I would, taking it wholesale, you know, it's really going to be up to SIG apps, I would say. I'm curious how that conversation went. But it's certainly another approach is to be an independent project and then take your features back one at a time, as Tim is suggesting. But it really comes down to if SIG apps can accept that additional commitment to support and develop these. That's my opinion.
Thank you. I think SIG apps were saying the same thing, basically. So they suggested that we stay as a separate project, but then keep upstreaming back when certain features are available, or when the upstream is actually looking for those features. Then it's a good time to contribute back and eventually be absorbed to the part that there's going to be huge differences. But I think there are a lot of common use cases that can be contributed back to upstream, and we certainly do want to have our workloads or our code be part of the official release of Kubernetes. That will be ideal. It's just right now our features are still under development, and we don't have much. We are not sure about how these things will go eventually, or will look like eventually after rounds of testings by the community. So that's what we want to go through the sandbox process.
I'm going to type my answer. audio issues. I put my answer in chat. Is there any other question you have, or shall we move on to the ephemeral containers?
No, I just would like to ask you, please, please write to the, please reply to that email list on the CNCF TOC subject about this topic, and then we can move on. Yeah. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there, I guess Tim's got to leave. Tim or Wojtek, or is there anybody who, Walter, can run the meeting since it's not working well for me? Or Hippie?
I'm happy to. I don't have the agenda up. Let me see if I can get that without killing the audio.
Next is ephemeral containers.
Hey everyone, can you hear me okay? I was having trouble with audio too. If you can hear me, maybe just ping the chat.
Yeah, we can hear.
Yes.
Okay, great. Hey everyone, I'm Verb on GitHub, and I wanted to reach out and talk a bit about ephemeral containers today with SIG architecture because it touches several parts of the system. So I do have some specific questions, but I thought I might start with a sort of a brief reminder of what ephemeral containers are and how they work. Ephemeral containers are, it's an alpha feature that allows adding containers to a pod that's already running. It's intended for troubleshooting, for interactive troubleshooting of things like distroless containers where you might not have a shell. Ephemeral containers have many restrictions above normal containers. Things like they don't have guaranteed resources. Only some fields are allowed, sort of the fields that don't imply a fundamental role in the pod. They cannot be present on pod creation, and they can only be added using a dedicated sub-resource. So right now the feature's in alpha, and we have an alpha command in kubectl to allow creating them. And I guess I'll pause here to see if there's any questions. Oh, okay, cool. So I wanted to talk about a couple of issues that were a bit contentious when we first started discussing ephemeral containers years ago. And those are specifically the ability to remove ephemeral containers. Right now, you can only add them. You cannot change or remove them. And the ability of configuring a security context. These weren't fundamental features necessary to get the feature started. But they are our most popular feature requests now. So I've written up an update to the KEP, which I've linked in the meeting notes. And I'd like to get some more eyes on it. So for example, I just learned that yesterday that I should not be building on top of pod security policy. So I need to go back and revise the KEP to not do that. But I would like to be able to make these two things configurable somehow on a cluster basis. So I'm not familiar with SIG architecture. I don't know, is discussing KEPs and update the KEPs something that we do here? Okay.
KEPs that have architectural implications, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the main architectural, I think I think the strongest guidance that I've gotten so far was from the API, and we may want to chat about the API with some experts to see if we want to change anything before graduating to beta. But these two specific things, they're sort of far-reaching. I think there's a lot of opinions about what should be allowed by auth and how we should be able to configure policy, but I don't know if they're architecture related. Okay, well, I'll assume from the silence.
Sorry, I think like there's a lot of audio issues going on.
Okay.
I paid close attention to this at the very beginning, and then it seemed like it was under control, and so I shifted to other things, and I haven't really come back to it. If you think it's useful, I'm happy to discuss it, to talk about what the bumps are that you're currently experiencing from the sort of API point of view, if you just want to talk with somebody from this group.
Yes, that would be great. So I will follow up with you about the API things specifically. I'll just read this message from John. Yes. Okay, so being able to tell if a pod is tainted is also included in my update to the KEP, and my idea there is having the kubelet set a condition. And I also learned today that there's a new format. I'm happy to update to the new format as well.
The new format should be an easy change. That's just administrative.
Production readiness questions, great. Yeah, okay, so that was the other thing that I wanted to discuss with is I get some feedback through GitHub issues, but not a lot. So I don't know. I would like to be able to get more feedback and more opinions from the community about whether we're ready to move to beta, whether it's something that we want to pursue. But it sounds like maybe production readiness is a venue to do that.
Production readiness is definitely something that we should pay extra attention to. I believe this falls into the case of everybody wants it, but it's complicated enough that few people are able to make the time to think about it deeply enough. I don't think you should interpret silence as people don't want this or aren't excited by it, mostly as everybody looks at it and says, oh my God, that's complicated. I don't have time to help.
Okay, great. That's great. That's good feedback. I can work with that. I'm not above pestering people. Okay, so that I think actually gives me good direction. That answers the questions that I had coming into this. Does anyone have any questions for me or any concerns or things that I should look at additionally? Okay. Sounds good. Thanks for your time. I'll follow up with these items.
Thanks, Lee. You know how to get a hold of me. The floor now goes to Hippie, who seems to be in a bank.
It's actually a pool. We moved neighborhoods this week, and I haven't yet figured out a place to work this bright and early in the morning. So here we are. I'm going to share my screen. but I am not able to yet. Could I get the permissions to do so? Un momento. Some exciting stuff on the way. We will finally, as SIG Arch, own a release blocking job as soon as the process is complete, but we're definitely kicking it off. Try one more time. Let's see, I think it is John or Dims may need to give me permission to share screen. You can enjoy this whole music. Thank you very much. I will share my desktop. All right, so main news that I'm super excited about, it's been several years in the making, is making sure we don't create any more technical debt. And we are in the process of creating that release blocking job here. Take a look at that if you're interested. The actual PR to get the job in. For now, that job, when it fails, will email our team until we ensure that the signal to noise ratio is correct. At this time, we actually do have a failure occurring, but it's a true negative. And if you went to the top of, like I just reloaded the page, apisnoop.io, apisnoop.cncf.io, we've added at the bottom anything new that occurs during a release cycle. And we can see that there's an entire new category called internal API server, which is mainly an alpha, but whenever we enable that from the generated Swagger JSON that ends up in the Kubernetes repository, which is our source of truth currently, we can talk about whether that's the right source of truth or not. It becomes something that we need to filter out as either writing a test for or putting in our list of endpoints. We have an area over here on our conformance or list of ineligible endpoints that has specific reasons each of these stable APIs are not part of conformance yet. For example, like storage and a few other things. Let's go back down to our notes for this meeting. If we click on these other links, like this is that alpha area. So on that particular release, I'm not sure how we launch it. There we go. This is clicking on the alpha area. We can see that this has a list of all those new internal API server endpoints. But if we back out all the way to here and go to stable, and this stable API endpoint is currently not tested and not conformance tested. I think we're likely just going to create I want to get a little bit of feedback on the process for what happens when we have promotions to GA that are pretty normal. Like anytime we get an API group, we're going to need to get that API group, and that's part of the stable. But that's as far as when we do our spinning up to generate the Swagger JSON, I think it's part of the release process where we spin up an API server with all alpha and beta API endpoints enabled and do a quick query to the living Swagger JSON endpoint and dump it into the Kubernetes repository. So to take that a bit, kind of table that for now, or we can discuss it. This is the actual gate itself when it runs. This is on prow.cncf.io, primarily used by my team right now, but we're looking to expand that out to more projects. At the very bottom, it listed the currently untested endpoints and returns non-zero so that the job fails. And this is where we'll get an email notifying currently our team. And then I'd love to get some feedback on where that should go longer term, whether we create a conformance mailing list that interacts with SIG release to ensure that the responsible party or SIG for creating those new endpoints covers their own debt before the release is made, or they have to revert those promotions. I'll stop on this point because this is one of the most important parts of what we've been working on and a huge milestone. I'll yield the floor for a bit. I don't hear any feedback. So
No questions, comments?
question.
Looks great.
Um,
Thank you for continuing to chip away at this.
We're happy to keep chipping away at it. This thing about no more debt is also huge for us. When we get this up, we can visit around next time we do a readout to just see how it's been performing as far as what we do with the emails and how we engage with SIG release. As I continue on, we saw a great increase in our conformance in 1.19, and we have a little conformance progress area where you see how far we've come. The red stuff is not always our team completely, but pretty much. And then the light blue area is stuff that's new endpoints that were promoted with tests, and so we're looking forward to those being completely taken over and be the only way to get new endpoints in by the time we get rid of that gray area. We have cleared all debt back to 115. Yay! So there used to be gray areas here. This is coverage by release, current, to see what's erased. So we've erased it all the way. We're working on this 114 area. If you look up here, you can see we used to have endpoints up here, this one here. Now we're working on this 114 to clear it all back to the beginning. Exciting. And Wojciech on the call is actually one of the few people who's contributed that's not on the team. Thank you for that. So that's LGTM and approve this. Any feedback we have for this PR would be great. This is one of the APIs I think that we caught and reached out to the SIG and say, would you mind cleaning up the mess with us? Thanks heaps. And without, I won't go into the details of it, but we do an OKR style goal setting based on the release cycle. And we have a presentation that we do during our bi-weeklies every once in a while. And also I roll up to the CNCF for feedback. So if you're interested in what our specific milestones are as far as the velocity that we have or the steps that we're taking, please take a look at the what we did and what we're up to. In addition to the work that II does for writing tests and blocking people from adding new APIs without tests, we also have had a lot of discussion around the conformance profiles, and I encourage you to take a look at John's KEP and give feedback on that. It's been a lively discussion. And that's me.
Thank you. Looking at the agenda, that seems like it. Were there other things that people want to bring up today? There's some good discussion on the mailing list this week. Maybe given the AV problems, we'll leave it on the mailing list. That sounds like consensual silence. All right, everybody gets 10 minutes back.
Silent calls we've ever had.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with Zoom today. Usually I blame it on myself, but since many people are having the same problem, who knows?
Have a beautiful week, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. We'll see you virtually.